through high school, I got like more into electronic music. I was incredibly into like finding different points of innovation, finding new sounds all the time. That was always like very thrilling to me. Just scouring the world and like searching for these sounds that are just electrifying to me
Yeah.
and finding joy in that, feeling like this changes everything and blows my mind. Just getting to that feeling.
Welcome to episode 3 of Untangling Ourselves, a podcast telling stories about how we change. This is a 2-part episode with Rob about finding and then losing and then finding again joy in music. How does a white kid in 1980s suburban Los Angeles go from throwing spitwads and blasting Run DMC in boombox wars with his siblings to the far reaches of experimental noise and classical to K-pop? I wanted Rob to tell his story because it's surprising. It's about a passion for sound, about the feeling of fandom, about subcultures, and about the changing world of how we access music. This first episode follows his search for sound through rap and death metal in the 1980s to 90s goth, industrial, and noise to 2000s experimental and classical. We talk about the search for sounds that blow your mind and change everything, about archiving, and about joy. We needed a whole second episode to cover K-pop, so that follow-up episode will come out on Friday. Rob blogs about music gems under the name The Aquamarine Layer. I'll put that link in the show notes. Speaking of which, the show notes are incredibly rich with this episode. Since we didn't put music in the episode, we'll have so many links and playlists for you for all these music genres, so please check those out. Today I'm here with Rob, who happens to be my husband.
Hello.
Hi. So first of all, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your journey with music?
All right. What do I say when I introduce myself? I mean,
I don't
I'm
know.
your husband. Um, let's see. Music has been extremely important to me. I think, one of my earliest memories in my life is when Michael Jackson's Thriller came on MTV in our house. And I was just like, oh my God, and just stood there and watched it. Gosh, where do I even start with that question? I mean, yeah, I've been through a lot of different kinds of music and generally less pop music. I mean, just to give a very fast summary. I mean, I was the first genre that I got into was rap and I was in the 80s. So it was that style of rap that existed back then. And
When you were
um,
very young or something, but
when I was 6, I got into Run DMC, and 7, I got into Beastie Boys. And
right.
those were the first 2 tapes that I bought. I had a lot of older folks. I had older siblings and step siblings and cousins. I had a lot of osmosis. Like, I don't think a 4-year-old would usually, like, an oldest child 4-year-old would have been watching MTV in
Yeah.
1984.
Yeah.
Um, but MTV was on because I was in a house with older kids. You're saying, like, I got into it a little earlier and I went towards the gangster rap when that became a thing, like NWA and Eazy-E and those people. And I also got into like Public Enemy, who sing about like Black Power and all this stuff. And I really had like no idea what they were talking about. I just thought it sounded really cool. I liked how the beats were really big. It was very rhythmic vocals, obviously, that really got me. And with like the gangster rap stuff, I just like the fact that they were swearing a lot, and that made my 10-year-old brain like very happy. I mean, I was a like quote bad kid, and didn't do well with authority and didn't find school very interesting, so I didn't pay attention and thought it would be more fun to like throw spit wads and do whatever, and like found my way towards being in the social group that was considered like the bad kids. So hearing adults or people that were of an age that I would look up to say fuck the police was also a very thrilling thing to hear, because it's like, oh, you can say that.
Hmm.
And I think that's another theme that I was thinking about when you were asking me about this, is like liberation was a part of my musical interests for a long time. Like, you can be liberated to just say whatever you want. And then from rap, I went to metal, and it was like you can make noise with your guitars and you can get heavier. You can make it like heavier and heavier and heavier until it just sounds like complete noise and blast beats. And you can sing about Satan and gore and death and all these crazy things. And then that was around the time that alternative music became a big thing. And of course, that was another kind of way of feeling liberated. I don't need to follow this kind of masculine rockist trajectory. I can think about like alternative lifestyles and alternative ways of being. And that opened up towards like punk and goth and industrial styles of music that did their own things in different ways. And so that was something that really kind of motivated me through high school. And then I found electronic music that was like via industrial. I found the idea of electronic music. And I think also like a moment that I remember being very transformational for me was opening up like the Nine Inch Nails CD booklet. And it said, they always had like such and such band is, and then they would list all the members inside the CDs. And it was like Nine Inch Nails is Trent Reznor. And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa, like you can just do that. You can just make some sound. One person can just do whatever they want, and that is music. You don't have to be like, this person does drums and this person does guitar and this person sings or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like this whole different way of doing it. And that led me off into like a new rabbit hole of electronic producers who kind of did whatever they want with sound and made sounds that were kind of unprecedented in the 90s and were really interesting.
So part of the reason you moved into electronic and noise was the liberation of just being able to do it on your own. You don't have to conform to these like rock standards.
Yeah. Yeah, just being even more non-conformist than rock was capable of being. And I think so, besides this kind of like liberation and non-conformity type of direction, have always been very fascinated by sound, and I just like interesting sounds and just hearing like new things all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another kind of path that I was going down.
So did you feel at the time like your interest in sound, like it sounds like the two main things were sound and liberation. And I'm curious if you felt at the time like you had a community around that, like you ever had people who understood what you were looking for, or maybe you weren't even aware yourself of what you were looking for, but
I think that, yeah, I did. And there's another element that I haven't really talked about, which is subcultures. That's another kind of approach towards music. Like when I was talking about like pop fandom, I was thinking like three different modes of music fandom that I sort of am aware of or think about is sort of subcultures, just interest in sound, and fandom, I guess.
okay, so that's interesting. So you're distinguishing subcultures and groups of people who are into a certain genre from like fandom, where you're like, I love this band.
Yeah, that's to me a different thing. I mean, they can be overlapping and related, but
Mm-hmm.
and so I did the first two for most of my life, or I did, yeah, interest in sounds, and then as a teenager, I moved into like also the subculture and started from the like punk alternative fashion sense and like finding my people with that way. Like in my teenagerhood, I don't know exactly if I have a way to describe it, but the way we saw it was not like this person is elevated on a plane above us. It's like this is a person who has done something cool, and I like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't worship them, or at least I claim not to.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's part of the culture not to worship. And this is kind of your electronic and goth and noise era.
This would be like more like the goth, and I was never really a punk per se, but I was sort of like around punks, and things that I was into were really punk punk related, and industrial was sort of this way. And I didn't get like really into the electronic music rave scene. That was always like sort of to the side of what I was into. I was aware of it, and that scene has like a whole background and ethos to it. And then as I got more further into like further underground noise and experimental, there isn't really like a subculture that I have ever been physically a part of because people who are into that are so like few and far between. And it doesn't have like a fashion or other elements of subculture as much. So that's more like the people that just really seek out very out there music and are really weird stuff. They find each other on the internet. Like that's where I found other people who were into that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've known people here and there that I've gone to shows with, but it gets more like when you go to those shows, you see just like the people who wear jeans and t-shirts and stuff, like the people who are just like, I don't care
Mm-hmm.
about looking a certain way. And
Is there a kind of purist thinking about the sound?
probably, yeah, there is definitely like some people are like, I'm above all that. Like, I'm not a
Yeah.
goth. I'm not this type of person. I'm none of that. I'm just a person who has like a pure interest in music,
Mm-hmm.
or sound. And then you will also get people who have super eclectic taste and then get very elitist about that.
Yeah.
I I like a little bit of every single thing and I don't like limit myself. I and like it loops back around to like, like Nine Inch Nails was this huge industrial band in the 90s. And then if you got more into industrial, it became uncool to like Nine Inch Nails because they were like the gateway to
Mm.
industrial. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like you would be, oh, I only like the stuff that came before, or I like the stuff that disregards the things that Trent Reznor did. And then you go further and there's like the even more elitist people who are like, all the formulaic industrial is bad and Trent Reznor is one who actually did innovative things, so he's better, and blah blah blah. And you can just like go around and around
Uh-huh.
what the is or whatever, trying to figure out what is the more ultimately more elitist than thou thing to say. I think some of those people that as I moved from like a high school kid to a college kid, I moved away from some of the folks like Trent Reznor and some goth bands and stuff that were like very overt with their emotions, and people get would get really wrapped up in the performer because that seemed, I guess, artificial to me, or I thought just music, just pure music would be like better or something.
Okay. So you moved a little bit away from goth, and that did have some of those elements of fandom. Because, like earlier, you were talking about the distinction between fandom and subcultures, and goth had some of the elements of like performance and persona and
Yeah.
being a fan of a certain performer.
Yeah, but I would still, to me, there's still a distinction. Subcultures is kind of like you take this whole identity that many people are part of and use that to connect with others. And I think subcultures are less prominent in the world now because of the way that we consume media. Back in my day in the, whatever, in the 90s and before, you would hear the mainstream music no matter what. You would like hear music everywhere. And people talk a lot
Yeah.
about how like that's not how it is anymore. Like Taylor Swift is the biggest artist in the world, and there are still like people who have never heard Taylor Swift because they just
Mm-hmm.
don't tune into Taylor Swift. And, it was very different. Like I heard mainstream music on the radio all the time. I heard it while I worked. I heard it in people's cars, blah, blah, blah. It was on MTV. And I think like the formation of subcultures in like the 80s and the 90s was a part of how people like staked out their identity in this world where we were like all awash in the same media.
Okay.
Certain of us were like, no, I reject that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not a person that just listens to whatever someone puts on the radio for me. I listen to this really specific thing. I like find my people by signaling that I am one of those people. And
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of how some of us who weren't inclined to the more normal stuff survived the monoculture world of the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. When you couldn't just type in on the search bar the kind of music you were into and join a group
Yeah.
all of a sudden.
Or yeah, and
Yeah.
just find music and stream it. I mean, like the availability of music is a whole other like huge topic. You know, you had to acquire physical things in order to listen to music in
Yeah.
the 80s and 90s, and it was scarce. Meeting like cool people who had access to cool music was like a very, I mean, you valued the friendship and connection, but like you literally had to do that if you were a person like me who was always looking for something new.
Mm-hmm.
Literally being connected to people would literally get you to new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the only way to do that, or one of the only ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going on like tangents and stuff, but I think about how it's very foundational to me to see cities as the place where you find cool stuff. And
Yeah.
that, in some sense, comes from that sort of like physical reality that I grew up, that like there were a lot of experiences and like things that you just had to physically go to a city to even like experience that at all.
Yeah.
I had to go to Amoeba Records in order to get the music that I was looking for because it literally couldn't be found anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Through high school, I got like more into electronic music. I was incredibly into like finding different points of innovation, finding new sounds all the time. That was always like very thrilling to me. Just scouring the world and like searching for these sounds that are just electrifying to me,
Yeah.
and finding joy in that, feeling like this changes everything and blows my mind. Just getting to that feeling.
Yeah. And it's really about the feeling. It's not just about the music as a pure innovation or something new. It's that what it does for you. That it
Yeah, I think I saw myself as someone who was valuing innovation in and of itself, or valuing that like avant-garde and newness and maybe like the theory behind that. But a big part of it, or maybe even like the most foundational thing for me, was just that feeling of the world opening up and feeling like my mind is blown,
mm-hmm.
and I've discovered something that gives me a new way to feel, a new way to be, and a new way to feel joy.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And that's maybe not a way that I would have expressed that, 20 years ago, but that's
Yeah.
how I think
Yeah.
about it
So that was kind
now.
of like the underlying goal, maybe, that you see when you're looking back, but it was within this framework of the subculture and the innovation and pushing the envelope of the music and
Yeah.
looking for that new sound. Yeah.
Through that time period, which was like the early 2000s, I felt like things got to feel more static for me, and like I wasn't getting those highs that I was looking for.
Yeah.
Through that same process of searching for new music. I was at KCSB and I had a lot of fun doing a radio show, but I got kind of burnt out on it.
Mm-hmm. And some of your sources for community around music were petering out. You said the serves were kind of petering out at that time.
Yeah,
And
like I wasn't as successful as I hoped at forging connections with people through music. Some of my connections were petering out, and like my connections on the internet were starting to, I think the internet was changing and I wasn't adapting, so that was part of it. Like I was on Usenet doing news groups through the 90s.
mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a whole kind of aspect of my story through high school that I haven't really talked about, but like getting online and sort of like getting connected to people who can tell me about things that people in my high school aren't talking about was like very huge
Mm-hmm.
for me in the 90s.
And it gave you a sense of a place to express some of what music does for you, right? Like
Yeah.
you could write about sound. You were mostly writing about sound, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I would write it. I don't know what was I writing about, like just all kinds of stuff. I mean, I was a teenager, and the things that people do on the internet a lot of time, even still, is argue. So there was a lot of arguing about whatever definitions. I did always get into like what is the definition of industrial music, or like what is the history of it, who came before
Okay.
who did what
Okay.
when, who's connected to who, and getting into these like lineages, and also just like sharing. I wrote music reviews, so just like sharing my like mind equals blown moments with these
Mm-hmm.
new CDs that I was getting,
Mm-hmm.
writing
What
reviews of
were like?
concerts.
Can you think of a couple of CDs just in case other
Oh, like
people listening are into this?
Nurse with Wound was a huge one. Like they just approach sound from like a completely open perspective and do whatever with
Mm-hmm.
it. I was into Japanese noise like Merzbow and Obe and incapacitance and all this stuff like that. And also getting into like electronic music like Autechre and Aphex Twin. I mean, there's a ton of
Yeah.
folks I could
Okay.
probably name drop, but I was mostly on like the industrial and noise music news groups and some related email lists
So this
and
was
things
a
like that.
kind of like I'm thinking about your story in terms of there's Michael Jackson's Thriller and there's
Yeah, there's a
rap,
lot between there and there. Yeah.
which was really mind-blowing and also liberatory for you and gave you this whole culture. And I'm also thinking about your story in terms of when you were a child and a teenager, the clothing and the visuals were very important to you, right?
Yeah.
Even though as you got older that kind of dropped off, at least in terms of what how you analyze your approach to music. And then you have the Usenet years and the noise, and so then you're getting into college and you're not quite finding that mind
Yeah, I mean,
blown
I did
moment.
for a while, but then I mean, I was in college for a while too, and towards the end of it, it was like not quite doing that. It wasn't yielding the result anymore. And I got to this point where like when you've gone to the complete and total avant-garde and noise and experimental and it's like people can do literally whatever they want and you've heard all of that and it's kind of like where do you go from there? Like once you've completely liberated yourself in a sonic fashion from any constraint and done whatever you wanted, then you can keep doing that over and over again, but it doesn't quite feel as liberatory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And of course, it wasn't only that. I mean, I also liked the sound, and there were like just things other things I enjoyed about it that I could still enjoy, but it wasn't hitting hitting me the same way.
And
And
a quote that I remember from this time period is, "My kids will never be able to shock me with their music because
I
I've
said
gone,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I've gone as far as you can go in terms of
Yeah.
shocking and
I mean,
innovative
I
music."
also
Yeah.
before that was like into, death metal and all this stuff where they sing about gore and crazy scenarios and Satan and whatever. And, the gangster rap where they say the F word 81 times in a song. Like when I was 10, I counted that back then.
So I guess I mean this is a sidetrack from the story, but have your kids shocked you with their music?
I wouldn't say they shocked me, no.
No.
Um, they are into cool stuff. They've both
Yeah.
gotten into interesting things, and
Yeah.
they've both gotten into things that I'm not quite into,
Hmm.
which is cool. That's what you should do.
Yeah, they're into funk and the other one's
Funk,
into
yeah,
Vocaloid and I guess you would say goth.
like folky, weird stuff.
Yeah. We're still learning, yeah.
Well, maybe I can't describe it. It doesn't shock me, but I can't describe it.
Which is cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
so yeah, our one younger child playing a YouTube short of the same like 30 seconds of a funk beat for an entire like 2 hour drive was interesting. I don't know if I would say it shocked me, but it was an experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you kind of push the envelope and the envelope's in shreds and
Yeah.
you're trying to figure out how to find this feeling. Maybe you don't know that at the time,
I
but you're
don't know
still
if I'm
trying to
even
figure
trying to
out.
figure it out. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean I'm sort of like I don't know what I'm doing, but
So I kind of want to summarize there's kind of this lull in your music fandom things. You had grad school before that where you went off to New York City. And you want to talk about that a little bit?
sure, yeah. I mean, yeah, the early 2000s, I'm like wrapping up college, and that time period was sort of a lull in my previous like approach to finding music. Some of my communities online were sort of dying down, like the Usenet and some like forums and stuff that I was into were going less active, and I didn't really know where to look, partly because I wasn't really sure like what was like a framework for what I was into anymore. Like it had gotten so disparate, all these different things that I was into, and it wasn't summarized. There wasn't an easy way to summarize it and an easy
Mm-hmm.
way for me to like find a community around it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like getting different interests. Like you mentioned that I was in a gamelan ensemble. So I was just like, oh, that sounds like a cool thing to check out. And that was fun. And so I went off to grad school and I went to New York and like I bought a laptop and an iPod and really just like literally shelved my CDs in my mom's garage. And that was for almost 10 years or more than 10 years. I really like lost touch with my music collection, or I didn't have it very organized after that because I literally just took however much music would fit on my iPod, which was probably like a third of my CDs that I owned,
Mm-hmm.
and just threw them on my iPod. And I had very little time to like get interested in music or engage with it the way that I had before. And I was in grad school, like really overwhelmed. I was in New York City, like there was probably tons going on that I could have been checking out or getting involved in at the time. But I just didn't like have the right presence of mind to think about that. And I was just kind of like checking out whatever was on my iPod, which was
Mm-hmm.
my old music. And I would walk down to the library and like grab a bunch of classical CDs that I had never heard of. And like I found Alain Grimaud, which is like my all-time favorite pianist that I still listen to all the time.
And it wasn't true that you were totally out of touch with New York City, like maybe not subcultures, but you were going to classical concerts and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would go to concerts sometimes and engage with the urban planning and the history of New York and the
Yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah, I was really focused on school and trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life for a career and all that. So I was, yeah, my head was in a different place for music, mostly other than listening to it while I read papers in the library all the time. So just skipping forward, I wasn't very much engaged. I did do the KDVS run, which was really fun and like got me back into it while I was in a time period of being unemployed.
And KDVS in Davis is a really special radio station
It's
in
really
terms of
cool. Like
college radio. Yeah.
the library was several times the size of the KCSB library. It was cool to be involved with. They also put on shows. So I like as part of my volunteering, I took tickets at shows and heard all these random underground bands. It was like another high point in my music life to be involved in KDVS. Like it didn't quite get me back to where I was in age 4 to 22 or so.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't like get me to like I still felt like I was carefully mapping out the world of music and not like hitting upon things where I'm just like electrified and my hair is standing up and I'm
Mm.
having fun all day.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still like finding cool and interesting things and developed some sense of community while I was there. That all kind of shifted as I moved over to the Bay Area. And then shortly after that, we had kids and our lives got very different and a lot busier with kids and stuff. So I couldn't continue with KCSB from the Bay Area. I'm sorry, KDVS.
Yeah.
And so all right, that kind of gets me through like the 2010s. I'm still I didn't like really have a thing during that time other than like I'm parenting and I'm working and get it, keeping this family alive and sometimes going on cool trips and cool hikes and stuff. But like, yeah, I sort of like lacked that separate thing for myself.
Yeah.
And then like music never like lost its importance, but it sort of fell to the background of being like, this is all this stuff that I used to be into or that I am into still, but in kind of like a more of like a legacy way of being into it. And
It's not making you feel alive in the
yeah,
moment.
and working life has been its own huge set of challenges and ups and downs in my life. But prior to 2020, It was a long commute. It was like an interesting sort of time just getting to the music part because I had long periods of time in the car to listen to stuff, and I listened to my entire digital music collection while I had that job. I also finally, after more than 10 years since I like switched over from CDs to laptop and computer MP3, I brought my entire CD collection and like sat there and compared my collection to my digital collection. And while I'm at my job, I would sit on YouTube, and it's like, well, I never listened to enough Sonic Youth when I was a kid, even though they're very important in music history. So I listened to everything by Sonic Youth on YouTube or other bands like that I needed to catch up on, and developing, like finding this and that here and there. But yeah, it was still like it was like this archivist project that was like a semi job, semi hobby.
Uh-huh.
Like I like have a methodology to like run through like every genre and every important artist that I've ever heard
Yeah.
of.
I mean, it sounds like the part of you that was on Usenet talking about lineages, you also felt this duty kind of to be comprehensive in your
Yeah,
understanding of the music, of your legacy music.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's another aspect of this idea of you finding something you really want to do in your life, which is it's not just the music, it's also this like archiving and organizing and really broad overview of your music that you're passionate about, and then also really in depth about specific songs. Like it goes all directions in terms of it's not just going to shows or just popping on a CD for you. It's a lot of things.
yeah. I do have like an archivist mentality, and I don't know what the analogy is, but like I like to spread my net everywhere. Like for I think years or decades of my life, I have thought of myself as sort of scouring like the entire world to find these like gems that exist in different places. Maybe there's some amazing jazz that I've never heard before, so I'll try to listen to like all of jazz to try to find that thing. Or maybe there's some like Finnish avant-garde pianist who has like done something that would completely change my life if I just found that thing.
Mm.
And
So you're like always looking for that thriller again.
yeah, I'm always looking for thriller or just that moment where you're like, this is something that completely shifts, or maybe doesn't completely, but shifts at least a little bit what I think is possible in the world and how to experience joy through sound in a new way. And just feeling, but I can also get very systematic about it, and being very systematic about your hobbies doesn't always isn't always like a very joyful way to pursue your hobby. Like and be
Mm.
like, okay, I need to just, well, like I DJ'd at KDVS for a while, and it's like they have like 60,000 CDs or records in their library, and I'd be like, oh my God, I need to like and listen to every single one of them, because what if the thing is somewhere
Uh-huh.
in there? Um,
So as you're
and
talking, it's so interesting to me because I feel like since I've known you, you spent 20 years doing that, except you entirely ruled out pop music and, K-pop barely existed on your radar. And so you were doing this like really thorough search through like, I don't know what you would call it, new classical and experimental and noise and
okay, yeah, and then we get to the K-pop part, or
yeah.
we'll circle towards it eventually. So 2020,
And this whole time that we're talking about all these like 20, 30 years, pop music is around you, it's on the radio,
right.
but it's never been something that you're archiving, exploring,
Yeah, I
you
wasn't
know,
like a historian of pop music very much.
no. Only
I,
just like 80s music.
yeah, I got into 80s music. I talked about like on Star 98.7, we would have like totally 80s Friday nights, and my friends and I would drive around and blast the 80s music, and we thought it was so cool. And that still felt like somewhat subcultural because it's not today's music, it's 80s music.
Mm-hmm.
And there was starting to already be a thing to like dress 80s as sort of like an ironic hipster thing
Yeah.
among people that I was around in high school. Referencing back to that was interesting and cool. And and in my mind, like there was good pop music and then kind of all went to shit. And that's like a typical elitist way to think about a lot of things. Like, oh, it was good.
Yeah, I mean, I remember a lot of that sort of commentary, and but it was pretty dark when you would make those comments. Like, there's no good music, it's all over. Like,
Yeah, I did.
um,
I had moments where I just thought like music is done. Like everything
yeah,
has been done,
yeah,
and like the only thing left to do is just like do what has been done over again,
yeah,
just for kicks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is kind of dark. Yeah.
Yeah. But there are like two parts of this, which is there is an elitist aspect of it, and there is a genuine thing that I actually do still today, like 80s pop music more than 90s pop music. Like
Mhm.
it just hit me differently and
Mhm.
it did different things. I don't necessarily like it more than 2020s pop music, especially from Korea, but
Yeah.
we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Um,
So the other little blip in terms of pop music entering your radar is the Taylor Swift concert special.
that I have not been like completely averse to pop music in my life. And first of all, there's these, the 80s stuff. I could talk about other points where it sort of peaks in, like my friends and I went to see the Spice Girls movie in 1997 or whenever that came out. And we thought it was just like very ironic and silly or whatever. But,
Mhm.
I'm sure we actually enjoyed it.
Like
To some
looking
extent.
back, you
Yeah.
probably were really into the presentation and the persona and
Yeah. I mean, I
that kind of
probably
stuff.
thought things like
Yeah.
about it were
Yeah.
very cool.
That's so
And
funny because I have the same story about Spice Girls, but it's a different.
did your friends go see that,
No, no,
ironically?
no. My sisters listened to it, and
Oh,
I was very invested in not being cool at all. I was very closed off and not willing to have
have
cultural
fun and
expression.
listen to Spice
Have
Girls.
fun. Yeah. And my sisters were into it, and I vividly remember enjoying it and then pushing that down, being like, no, this
Yeah.
is not me. I mean, a totally different context, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And at other points in times it peaks through like in 2018 I got really into the Taylor Swift concert that was on Netflix. Like they had it as a feature on the front page and I was kind of like, oh, I'll check this out. I don't know that I've ever heard Taylor Swift. I keep hearing that name. I thought maybe our kid who is super into Vocaloid and
Well, now they are. They're
out
not,
there folk
they weren't
music.
back there.
They weren't back then, but
No.
I thought, oh, my kid might get into this someday as a parent. I should know what this is or whatever. And also it's just this big cool looking banner on the front of
Hmm.
Netflix. So what the hell? And then I started watching it and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I went from being like, oh, I wonder if my kid will be into this someday to being like, I need to get my kid into this so that I have an excuse to go to this concert.
Yeah. You're like not quite ready to, go to a concert or buy a CD for yourself just because it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't go all full Swifty or get really into Taylor Swift at the time, but I sort of like dabbled in that. And one of the issues with it, or sort of things that I was not like fully grasping at the time, was this idea of like an audio-visual presentation being kind of the way to get into music. Like in my sort of pure musical mindset, that would be kind of an impure way to get into music. So watching a concert video like is not the way to get into music. You have to like listen to it.
Hmm.
Listening to Taylor Swift like without the concert video didn't quite have that same effect on me at the time. So yeah, I didn't like fully go into that. And the fandom aspect of it was not something that I totally related with.
Yeah, you were never doing the like puzzles or the backstory of the artist kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's part of that.
People who get into Taylor Swift, it's not all about like just the music. There's this whole like persona that she has. There's a way that she relates with fans like outside of just her music. And there is her stage presence, concerts and so on that are like a big part of it.
Yeah. You were looking for this pure sound that would blow your mind or bring you joy. And I feel like it's only in the last 7 years since this, when you're talking about that, you've recognized how important that visual, spatial immersion is for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just I just think of that Taylor Swift thing as like kind of a prequel to my fandom because it was sort of this different way of approaching music that was peeking through to me, but I didn't keep following that pathway at the time. And as part of that, when I was watching that movie, I also went over to the Taylor Swift subreddit and they had like a whole live thread because the movie had just come out on Netflix. And that was also like a striking thing. It just felt like this really cool sense of community there. Like everyone was like very positive
Mm.
and just sort of like cheering on their person. It's like a whole different like thing to do with music, like just sort of being a fan and being happy about that
Uh-huh.
and not always feeling the need to like critically evaluate everything in the same way.
And you had been talking before too about in really experimental music, subcultures, it's almost like the listeners and the musician are leveled. Everyone is trying to innovate, and the musician is not someone, it's not, it doesn't matter who they are almost in
Yeah,
subcultures.
very it's very I call it like a flattening out of the difference between like the fans and the musicians and it's a lot more participatory, which I think is also cool in a different way because
Mm-hmm.
it's like it questions and discards a lot of the preconceptions of like the barriers to entry to being a musician and the barriers to entry to producing music in a certain way, like having the production values. There's a lot of DIY aesthetics. So there is this feeling like anyone in the audience could just like pick up something that makes noise and be up on the stage instead of in the audience.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think about how hierarchy would make for a more friendly environment. I mean, that is counterintuitive,
That
right?
is an
And
odd
I'm
thing to say.
thinking about the judgment. So if everyone can create music, then which music should you listen to? It becomes very discerning, like this is worth my time, this is not worth my time, this is good, this is not good. But if you're cheering somebody on as like, yay, you made another album, we love it, there's not any, you're not judging each other as fans, maybe? I'm just sort of exploring how this is possible. I don't know if you
I
have thoughts about it.
I it's interesting. I mean, I would say it's not necessarily inherently a better way to do things. It's, I think, plenty of people in a more DIY culture get very genuine joy out of being in that, and that it can be very good. I think that like a pathway to go down that I went down for a while was that the thing that matters is whether you are doing something new and innovative and whether you're doing something that matters. And so it's more like judgmental towards the art that is being created itself. And for me personally, I kind of like got what I could get out of that and felt like I had like reached a dead end.
Hmm.
Um, but so I think there can be aspects of it that get elitist, like these people are just like rehashing ideas, they aren't doing something new, and there can be like an element of it of feeling like you're listening to it because or you're participating in this culture because it's important, not necessarily because you just get a whole bunch of joy out of doing that. So that's the part that can make it less appealing, I guess.
Yeah.
And like the pop music is this whole different thing where it's very produced and staged and it needs to have like this whole army of people behind it that like put on the show in a certain way, like a very, I don't know, like it's a big production and it can't be done at least like the kind that big pop music. There's like bedroom pop or whatever, but the big stuff is produced in a way that needs to have like a whole production team behind it, so it can't be DIY. And that's something that I was not like very open to. Like I thought like it's kind of funny because I also throughout a lot of my later adulthood, I was really into stuff like classical music, which also has that element of being pretty elitist and also being like a big production. Like you need a lot of people who have practiced a lot, and you need like a really specific type of venue to put it on. So that's a whole other thing kind of to think about.
And but classical is like, I mean, I feel like when you were into classical, you were looking for that sound, and it's such a that sound is there's so much to explore there. So,
Yeah, it was for me like definitely finding new or new to me or just kind of electrifying ways that sounds can be created and recognizing talent of people that can play these kind of incredibly difficult pieces was also part of that. Yeah, I think the sound exploration was probably and is probably the biggest thing that I get out of following classical music.
mhm. I mean, when I think back to Ellen Grimaud, I know she's good, like, and the sound is amazing. She also has a persona for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, she like rescues wolves. She's very dramatic. She has this kind of natural slash dramatic performance, which now that I'm looking on it doesn't feel 100% different than some of the K-pop that you've
Yeah,
pursued.
it's not a completely different thing. Like, yeah, I think there's something there. I think it people there are some musicians in classical that have more of a persona like that, and maybe it's not like coincidental that I got really into Alenka Mode who is marketed that way.
Yeah.
And I think yeah, probably gives people cover to just be like, oh, I just like this pretty piano music. Um,
Right.
but there's more to it
I
than
mean,
that.
why would you even need the cover? Like when you question it, it comes down to just that like purism or just I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to me how you've evolved to like embrace the visual as being something that matters in the experience, you
Yeah,
know?
and another part of my like alternate history is that I originally came to music via MTV. Like having those music videos and seeing it on TV, I think was important to me initially, and then I for 30 years or so went more towards just a like pure music direction. Partly I just got into stuff that just wasn't on MTV. So,
Yeah.
but also it was just like this exploration of sound that I felt was more of a pure thing.
Hmm. I mean, in a way, it feels very Western philosophy to even try to separate these things out as, you know, like the
Yeah.
best sound can't be like you can't judge the best sound and have your judgment clouded by the visual, you know?
Yeah,
That's
and you
very,
have, and in types of electronic music that I was into, like IDM and drum and bass and breakcore and stuff like that, a lot of times, like you don't even know what the people look like. There's never a picture of them. They might not even put their names on the release.
hmm.
Um, and the album has like some sort of geometric thing on the cover and then like song titles that are just gibberish. Like you don't even get a song title really. Um, you just get sound, and
So
some of
we've
it is
like
really, really cool.
deleted the visual, we've deleted the language. We're
Yeah,
just
we're
doing,
just pure sound.
yeah, yeah.